How's it going there, folks? Welcome back here to a Saturday night. It is the Earthmaster back here on this end of the microphone. April 6, 2024, 10:23 p.m. here. California time. Latest activity shows a 4.1 earthquake up here across the, just outside of the Cascadia subduction zone. That is on the plate boundary, though, of the Juan de Fuca plate, this microplate right here, and also the Pacific plate. A little bit of interesting activity out there for sure. Also kind of an odd earthquake out here up into Canada, north of where we've been seeing the New Jersey activity. This earthquake coming in as a 3.3 earthquake. So still a lot of earthquake activity and pressure out here against the North American plate. Southern California down here rocking and rolling a little bit. A couple of small earthquakes here in the last hour or so. Bay Area, of course, we did see a three-pointer out here earlier this afternoon, 3.2 outside of Berkeley. The earthquake was felt fairly broadly out here across the San Francisco Bay region, about 8.9 kilometers deep for that 3.2. A handful of smaller quakes out there as well within the vicinity of that three-pointer, which sits on, well, the Hayward Fault Zone. This one's definitely somewhat overdue. They put this fault system at a fairly high percentage of seeing a large earthquake here in the next 10 or 15 years or so, but that that little percentage they put out has been, it's past a few years now. That was back in, I can't remember what year it was, but quite a few fault systems out here across the Bay Area, well overdue in terms of producing a large earthquake. Up here across the Northern California region outside the Belden area, once again, a 2.2 coming in. This area did see a four-pointer a couple days ago or so, 4.4. This one originally came in as a 4.8 and a 4.5. These got downgraded substantially by the USGS, but looks like there was at least a couple more earthquakes here in the last 24 hours within that region. All right, looking at the New Jersey activity. Let's see what's going on here. Just kind of odd, right? Seeing one over here and one back over here roughly about the same time of each other. Definitely think something bigger is out here lurking. All right, so we got to bring back the last 7 days of activity to see the total tally here of earthquakes out across the New Jersey area. Kind of an odd zone, but they do get some historical earthquakes out here, and sometimes a little bit bigger than the one that we've seen. So far, the 4.8 is the largest, along with a 3.8 aftershock. Hopefully, these are all just aftershocks. Either way, 35 earthquakes here in the last couple days in an area that, hardly ever sees earthquake activity. But again, history shows us that there has been some large earthquake activity out here and along further areas of the eastern seaboard. Just a lot of time has, it's been a long time since we've had any large earthquake activity out here. And so that's why people have become complacent, thinking that, well, earthquakes are going to be left over here across the plate boundary. But that's not the case. History has shown us that we've seen many large earthquakes out here, but it's been, a couple hundred years or so for some of them. If you look at the U.S. hazard map here, it shows areas that has seen large earthquake activity, including the New Madrid seismic zone that's capable of producing some upper 7 magnitude earthquakes back in 1811, 1812 or so. Over 200 years of built-up strain. Also down here across the Charleston area, they've seen some big earthquake activity out there historically, around New York as well, and further areas up into Maine. So the hazard zones out there are not confined just to the West Coast. It might be more often out here that we see earthquake activity. That's because we have the plate boundaries and constant movement and strain out here. But the East Coast, no doubt, they will get some big earthquakes here eventually again. All right, let's see what else we got here. There's a couple smaller quakes around the Cascadia. Nothing of concern. Let me see what we got for the tremor map here tonight. Let's see what's going on with the tremor along the Cascadia. So we got 58 epicenters of tremor. That is not earthquake activity, but tremor that occurs down into the subduction zone itself, about 45 kilometers down there. and that's kind of like a slow slip event type of earthquake, but it's not a sudden release, more or less like a slow movement between the two plates down there into the subduction zone. And that, well, not that big of a deal. 58. This is still a very low number compared to our last major tremor event there back in 2022, October to be exact, where we've seen quite a few hundreds, even almost 1,000 tremors in one day. So not for sure what's going on out here. I don't know if the Cascadia is getting ready to pop out here, but it's definitely acting a little on the odd side in terms of the regular tremors that we're normally used to, in terms of those intervals that we look for. It's just doing a lot of different stuff here recently. 4.1 out here across the plate boundary. It does look like they've adjusted it here a little bit. It was a little bit more off over here when I showed you guys. So either way, 4.1 we'll continue to watch at. A little bit of activity inland here across the Washington region as well. Nothing major going on. Yellowstone National Park, it is a weekend. For the most part, anything that's below 2.5 will not be shown until Monday morning once I get into the office and have a seismologist look at it. As far as the Yellowstone site here, this thing's been acting a little crazy. There we go. A little slow at times there when you click on their website. Far as earthquake activity goes there across the Yellowstone National Park, it is a supervolcano. It remains quiet and sleeping, and that is a good thing. Not a whole lot of earthquake activity out here for now. All right, look out and about here across the rest of the world. Quite active. Look at the Pacific Plate out here. All around the Pacific Plate, it's almost like a domino effect here. Things have been really in motion recently. And, I don't think we're done yet. We're looking at an increased period of earthquake activity globally, and most of it revolves around the Pacific Plate here. You can see a lot. Look at that. That's quite a bit of earthquake activity out here on a broad scale. Let's go ahead and zoom in here to the Kuril-Kamchatka, the latest one of 4.4. There's that deeper activity once again into the subduction zone. Building up strain for the next megaquake here across this area. It's been awfully quiet, and we can get some large, big-time tsunami-producing earthquakes up here. And, 2011, the Japan Trench here has seen that 9-pointer, but I am more concerned about this large section here of the subduction zone that hasn't seen any large-scale activity in quite some time. The Taiwan area still seeing some aftershock activity, mainly 5s and 4s. Eventually this should go down in terms of the multitude of quakes. Out here across the Papua New Guinea area, looks like the latest one, a 5.1 from earlier this morning. Back over here across the plate boundary of the Tonga Trench and the Kermadec Trench regions, well, handful of deep earthquakes. The last one, though, 5-pointer, some shallow activity. If we look at the last 7 days here of earthquake activity, we can probably get a little view of what areas may need to fill in. There's still certain regions up here across the Solomon Islands that really hasn't seen too much earthquake activity. And generally, this area sees a good handful in a week's time frame. There's just not a whole lot showing up there. Down into the New Zealand area, the 4.3 earthquake, that was way earlier this morning. It looks like that's going to be the 5-pointer that the GeoNet servers were producing. We're showing up here. Yeah, see, from GeoNet, this is being reported as a 5.1. USGS reporting that as a 4.3. So that is quite the magnitude difference there. Either way, some earthquake activity taking place out here. Let's go check out the GeoNet map here and see what we have for New Zealand. 3.9. There's that 5.1. There has been a handful of smaller quakes in that area where that 5-pointer struck. Let's check out the earthquake drums and see what we got. There is the signature of that 5.1. USGS showing this as a 4.3. I don't think it's a 4.3. It looks a lot bigger than a 4-pointer. So I'm going to go with the GeoNet servers on this one. Followed up by some 2s and 3s out here after that 5-pointer. But if you look in the last few hours or so, things have quieted down out here quite nicely. Same for the North Island area. Not a whole lot of movement popping up here, but we still definitely have to watch it. You know, New Zealand's been on my list for quite a while of seeing some larger scale potential. We've seen a lot of deep activity underneath the North Island here recently, and of course, they got their own subduction zone out here called the Hikurangi subduction zone, and that's very capable of producing some mega quakes as well. It's just a matter of time, you know, before that decides to go. You know, but if you think about this time frame that we're living in right now, we've all been adjusted to, you know, California seeing some earthquakes on occasion, and you're always hearing about Taiwan and Japan, you know, but eventually the time will run up out here across Southern California and other areas that are well built up for strain, right? I'm not for sure what the accumulated slip rate out here across the New Madrid seismic zone is, but, you know, 200 and something years of built up strain, so there's always a potential of seeing some larger scale movement out there and many other areas. The Cascadia subduction zone, it's been 324 years, so all this time has passed. We're all nice and complacent. Eventually that's going to shake some things up out here with some movement. Across this area of the world, looks like most of the movement there from early this morning, my time, 3 o'clock in the morning. A couple fours out there. Far as Hawaii goes, a handful of earthquakes, nothing major going on. Mediterranean area, quite a few 2s and 3s, but nothing of abnormal activity. The Atlantic Ocean, pretty quiet. It almost seems like all this activity that kicked off here in the Atlantic a few days ago. Let me show you guys. We had a decent swarm of 5s out here across the Mid-Atlantic Ridge area. Looks like about, we had about 8 of them. And a lot of it was down here across this area. And it seems like ever since this happened, things have been really rocking and rolling over here across the Pacific Plate. It makes sense a little bit, right? Because those are divergent boundary zones where the separation of the seafloor takes place. And no doubt, if you think about it, that can affect areas across the North American plate. Not only the plate boundaries, but what goes on here across the intraplate regions. And you know, you push and shove one piece of this giant puzzle further to the west, well, ultimately that could affect other plate boundaries as well. And that's why we're seeing all that earthquake activity ramping up here across the Pacific Plate here recently. That's just a lot. Look at that. For one day, you know, I was wondering why the Earthquake 3D globe looks like it does, because there's so much activity out here in the last couple days. That's definitely a noticeable uptick. And no space weather activity to blame. Look at this little earthquake on the, well, just off the San Andreas Fault there. That's the southern branch here. 8.1 magnitude earthquake can take place out here anytime. Anytime. They've been talking about this for many years, and here we are, years into the future, and we still haven't had it. So it's just a matter of time before things adjust down there in Southern California. And when it does, it's going to be a big one. All right, let's check space weather activity here real quick and see what's going on. I don't think there's a lot. There's the sun being eclipsed right now by the Earth. I believe that's right. And it happens every 24 hours, so you get this loss of data. That's what we're seeing right there. We'll get to the eclipse viewed from Earth here in a minute with cloud cover forecast. But as far as flaring activity goes right now, we're really not seeing much. Look at that, down into the B. I call that the boring flare class. Not a whole lot going on here in the last couple days. We're looking at a couple very measly weak sunspots out here. Here's the magnetogram image showing the complexity, if they had any. There's really not a whole lot out here in terms of potential. We do have a couple sunspots out here on the eastern limb that may be showing a little sign here of complexity with this one. But for the most part, we're looking at a quiet period of space weather activity and all this earthquake activity, right? A lot of people, you know, including myself here, I do see an elevated uptick in earthquake activity following a large CME or a large flare. Most of the time. But here we are, a lot of earthquake activity, big time, kicking up all over the world. And space weather activity is about as boring as you can get. So, it's one of those things. We have to mark this one down for the lack of relationship between the two right now. At least in my book, I've been trying to keep a tally of all the elevated earthquake activity in relation to any space weather activity. And I'll continue to do that. No auroras in the forecast. Far side of the sun. Let's see what's going on. See if they've updated this yet. I'll bring this over here. 4.6. Looks like that is updated. There's 36.15, right? If I remember right. Out there halfway around the sun here in terms of the far side. This is going to be the far side image. Still looks like a face, right? You guys see that? That is a little sketchy looking. 2 eyes and a mouse, right? A mouse. Excuse me. A mouth. That's and you can almost see a feature out here. That's a little crazy looking. Hopefully I don't have nightmares tonight looking at that. So the eastern limb right now, here's our 2 little sunspots, right, that I just talked about, one that may show complexity. We got a little while before we see 3615 return to the eastern limb, but it's remaining as a very active sunspot region. So I'm kind of curious to see if this will make its way around here for a second return trip on the Earth-facing side. All right, Storm Prediction Center. We got some severe weather, quite a bit of severe weather next week. If you look at the forecast here, day 4, which is going to be on Tuesday, Monday is going to be in here as well. Here's Monday. Quite a bit of big-time hail going to be produced out there. We'll cover that a little bit later. A lot of people wondering what's going on here with the cloud cover, so let's go ahead and look into it. Here's the most recent imagery. We're only about 48 hours out, less than that right now. We're at 42 hours out. So technically these models are going to be pretty accurate that far out, and they remain pretty consistent. We've been checking on this for a little while, and they've all remained pretty consistent. So this is the GFS model. It shows quite a bit of aggressive cloud cover out here, right? That's one weather model. Now the other one, the Canadian model, the one that a lot of people are using, shows very minimal cloud cover with a whole lot of openness. Now, you kind of have to blend all these together to make a decision on where you're going to be. Still a lot of cloud cover down in southern Texas there. If we check out the NAM model, that shows a little bit more cloud cover, but somewhat in agreement with the Canadian model. And it does show like some areas, maybe around Arkansas here, potentially being a spot that may not have a lot of cloud cover. Even on, let's go back here to the GFS, and we'll check out the precipitable water out here around this time frame. 18Z, that's going to be around the peak time frame of the eclipse. There's still, look at all this moisture that's going to be funneling into the area. They're supposed to have morning thunderstorms and then afternoon thunderstorms. So there's going to be a lot of cloud cover in general across this area. Arkansas up here still shows, a certain area, northern Arkansas, but there's a lot of moisture associated with that. On the ECMWF model through the windy map, let's go over here and check out this area for Monday. I'm going to use 11 a.m. California time because that's going to put it here at 1 p.m. Central time. And the cloud cover it looks the same across Texas. Now, one may be asking, well, what's all this light gray color? Those are supposedly high clouds, and it shows 29% pretty much anywhere because of the, high clouds can mostly block out a little bit of light, but if these are heavy-duty high clouds up there, it could block out a lot of the eclipse. If you look at the cloud base here, these are 30,000 feet cirrus clouds way up there that, if they're wispy and just a couple of them, that's great. But I think it's going to be more than that because there's a subtropical jet down here that's going to have a lot of moisture with it in the upper level atmosphere that's going to bring in probably some thick cirrus clouds up there. Low-level clouds are going to be these ones coming in that are going to be firing up the thunderstorms on Monday morning and also Monday afternoon out here in Texas. So I really think this area in Texas is going to be not viewable for the eclipse. That's an unfortunate thing, but there is some hope, further up the line here. If we look at the potential there for cloud coverage, maybe Arkansas, maybe a couple areas up here. And it's just going to be one of those things where people are just going to have to take a chance and see what they see. I mean, if there's just going to be some high clouds, that might be decent, for an eclipse. I don't know. It may block out the stars, though, when the totality happens. But as I said last night, I'm not going to take the trip out here. I was supposed to drive from Northern California out here to Texas. I was going to camp out at a little town called, it was just north of Uvalde out here, Concan. I think that's what it's called. Very little town. If I remember right, somewhere up in here. But and that was supposed to be 4 minutes and 24 seconds of totality, and I was really excited. I've been looking forward to this for a couple years, actually. A lot of people have been planning this, but I can't take the risk here of the cloud coverage. If it was only a 6-hour drive for me, I may consider it anyway, but I have to drive 24 hours there and then 24 hours back, and just to go out there to see some clouds and it get dark for a couple minutes, not worth it. I'm a little bit bummed out about it, but we'll see Monday. It's literally just one day away for some people. Not quite Sunday here. It's Saturday night, but for those that are in the Sunday zone, technically just the next day, and it's Monday. So we have to watch it. I really hope, and I got my fingers crossed that a lot of you guys that are out here in the totality line get to see it. But the way things are looking right now, it just looks like it's going to be a cloudy one out there. The GFS model is almost always aggressive, but they show a mix of low clouds, moderate, medium clouds, and high level clouds out here. So I don't know. We'll just have to see what happens Monday. I hope that some folks can see it. All right, what else is there, folks? I think that's about it. I'm going to jump off here and call it a night, I think. Hope everyone stays safe out there. Definitely a lot of earthquake activity ramping up out here for sure. We got one way down south here now. 5.1 coming in the last 20 minutes, it looks like. South Sandwich Islands. 10 kilometers deep on this fracture zone out here. The Antarctica and the South American region. That area is, well, that's on the, that looks like that's on the Scotia plate, right? Let's see here. No, that's right here. So that is back just a little bit over this way. Either way, we definitely got some movement kicking up here, folks. So just be prepared. I don't think we're over yet. Expect more aftershocks out there in New Jersey, potentially. This is just today. Again, we've had 10 in the last 24 hours, and in the last couple days, we've had 35. So quite a bit of shaking going on out there. All right, we'll catch you guys back out here in the morning for the Sunday morning update. Please stay safe and have a good evening. And we'll catch you guys back out here tomorrow morning.